Okay, everyone, I think we'll get started now. So hopefully everyone can hear okay. If not, hopefully you are having some success trying to maybe dial in through the phone. So please keep persevering, and we may get a few people joining us throughout, so hopefully I won't distract you too much. So first of all, I'd like to say hello and welcome to the Sustainable University Exchange. My name's Lisa. I'm here from the EAUC. And I'd like to say really big thank you to everyone for joining and for Professor Stephen Sterling for offering to host this exchange. So I just wanted to quickly update you on the Sustainability Exchange. So this is delivered by the EAUC, funded by HEFKI, and led by Staffordshire University. And these exchanges we've done quite a few now, and they've all been very popular, which is fantastic to see. They're free lunchtime webinars on a range of different topics. So if you're interested in hosting one, anyone can. If you've got something to share, a new idea that you want to share with people, please do get in touch with us, and we can host a webinar for you. So just a quick bit of housekeeping before we get started. So hopefully everyone can hear me. If you don't have a microphone, especially when we get to the questions section at the end, please do use the chat box. I'll be monitoring that throughout. So that the webinar will be presentation and then followed by questions at the end. So if you do have a question, please do try and hold it to the end if you can, and then we'll see how many questions we've got and hopefully get through as many as we can. Like I said before, everyone is on mute because there is a lot of background noise. Times 20 people, it can be quite noisy. So if you can't hear any, if you want to get in touch with me, please do use the message box. So when we get to the questions at the end, if you do have a question and you don't have sound, just say yes in the chat box and we'll come to you and ask the question. So if you can hold those to the end. Quick reminder that all of our webinars are recorded and shared on the Sustainability Exchange after the webinar. There'll be a couple of hours afterwards, and we also do send out a survey so that we can capture any other ideas that you may have for exchanges, and we can get some feedback on the exchange. So now I would like to hand over to Stephen to take us through his presentation. Over to you, Stephen.
Okay, just checking everybody can hear me. So hello everybody and welcome to everybody that's listening. This is a rather strange experience which I've done before, where you feel like you're talking to yourself, but I know you're out there, so I shall keep going on that basis, and thanks for giving up some time to listen to this. I've got about 23 slides. I'll talk for about 25 minutes or so to leave some time for questions. Those of you who are maybe involved in this area will know it's a huge area of concern. So all I can do in this time is to whet the appetite of those new to the area and maybe encourage some of the more experienced people to take this work further. But given it's an EAUC webinar, I'm going to assume some familiarity with the area. So thanks to EAUC for inviting me to give this short talk. It's on the basis of the book which came out in February, The Sustainable University Progress and Prospects. And this book seeks to do a couple of things. One is it challenges the higher education sector to raise its game further in the light of the somewhat massive global challenges that currently face us, and will definitely shape graduates' lives. And secondly, I hope the book will inspire positive change through its exploration of the notion of the sustainable university and illustrate ways through which its potential can be realized based on the experience and journeys of 10 higher education institutions in the UK, which I'll talk about later. But before coming on to the book itself, I want to talk more about the wider context and why the book was put together at all. So going on to the first slide. Let's see, nothing happening. I'll just do it on the. Yeah, there we go. A couple of years ago, this hoarding appeared at our university at Plymouth, outside a new building construction, and it's a great slogan. But what does it mean, and what does it imply, and how do we know we're doing it well? So Plymouth has built a good reputation in this area, but we're part of a a wider movement in higher education, both nationally and internationally. And your own university might be part of this movement. Here at Plymouth, are doing quite well on the face of it. So we're near the top of the Green League. We're doing well in the Life Index. We've got a Green Gown Award or two. But my question really is, this is very good and clearly welcome, but is it enough? And what about all those universities that don't see sustainability as any kind of priority? So part of the rationale for the book is what I would call a disjoint between the common purposes and practices in higher education and the unprecedented global trends and issues in the wider world. Just 2 days ago, I got hold of a couple of new reports. The first one is from the Worldwatch Institute, which looks at this question about whether sustainability is still possible. And it's got a lot of chapters looking at the state of various sectors, and it's got one chapter called Teaching for Turbulence. And the book argues against what it calls sustainababble, which it really sees as so much froth, really, and has a section on what it calls getting to true sustainability, as well as studies on coping with events if things really unravel. Al Gore's book is a study of 6 key drivers of global change, and he writes that there is a clear consensus that the future now emerging will be extremely different from anything we've ever known in the past. Now, when I was researching my own book, I was aware of a number of key reports written to mark the Rio Plus 20 summit, including from the Royal Society here in the UK, the United Nations Secretary General's high-level panel on global sustainability, the World Economic Forum, and WWF International. Another was the Foresight report from the United Nations Environment Programme. There's a quote from that particular report here. And they see the main challenge as being global governance, but the second one is transforming human capabilities for the 21st century, which is clearly an educational challenge. So all these reports see sustainability as fundamentally about securing and maintaining ecological, economic and social health. So this raises, if you like, what I would call the responsibility, that is responsibility of the higher education to respond to these issues. And also in researching my book, I came across Universities UK report on, it's called Meeting the Challenges of the 21st Century. It came out in 2011, and it talks about governance, funding, demand, quality, recruitment, and so on, all legitimate concerns, but there's nothing about these sorts of issues which are covered in the reports I just talked about. Now, Ian Patton, who we all know is the CEO of EAC, gave this quote recently, which you can read for yourselves, and it's a sort of a good news, bad news sort of statement, saying that there is a growing realization that universities need to respond to these issues, but there's still a real need for leadership which would take universities further. So it's a question of matching up educational policy and practice with this kind of complexity and these challenges. What's clear to me, working on this over some years, is that that there are 2 arenas of learning involved in this. One is what I would call the structured learning, is what we do with students every day, the curricular, learning outcomes, programs, and so on the left-hand side. But a sufficient response on that side of our work depends on sufficient organizational and social learning amongst staff and communities involved in higher education. And I think this is a sort of simple but key point, and those universities which have done well in this area have seen themselves more as learning organizations, which is a concept which originally came from business, of course. What's also needed is a sense of direction in all this, and this is, one of many different accounts you can find of what sustainability principles involve. Now, if we look at the student voice, which is increasingly important, of course, students are increasingly recognizing this is about their future. And to some extent, some students are ahead of staff on this. And I think most people will know now about the NUS surveys. I think the 2012 one will be published soon. I don't think it's out just yet. But a very encouraging response amongst the students surveyed about their attitudes to sustainability. But many universities are quite slow to respond to this increasing demand. This is a quote I use from Anthony Cortese in the United States. And he talks about the challenge, but also the fact that it involves a deep cultural shift, which a lot of universities are quite difficult to put into action. So this is a slide which shows, in a sense, a spectrum across the bottom there, and presently some universities will be off the scale on the left-hand side. They've never taken any account of this area. Some will be taking first steps on the left-hand side, where it's principally seen as an environmental issue and quite easily contained, and maybe mostly to do with estates and carbon management and so on. And then there's a spectrum of responses towards the right-hand side, which is much more transformative and much more holistic, and where sustainability is seen as impinging on most areas of the university's operation. This is, of course, more demanding, more ambitious, and more difficult, but I think this is the direction we need to go in, and I'll say a little bit more about that later. I'll just take a drink for a second. This talk is not an advert for the book, nor is it an advert for Plymouth University, but starting about 2005, we've been working on this agenda quite strongly, and there's quite a lot we can now be proud of, and these are some of the achievements of some of the things in place. But I'm now chair of the Sustainability Executive here, and I'm aware, as much as anybody, of where the holes are in the fabric, if you like, that what still needs doing. And those of you involved in this work will know that it's never ending. Many of us here have a holistic view of the implications of sustainability. For example, it has implications across all these areas and probably more. So it's led us towards the idea of whole institutional change, which is, again, a key idea which is covered in the book, which I'll come to shortly. So whole institutional change was looked at briefly in Hefke's report on sustainable development, which first came out in 2005. And I was pleased to see that it's very much echoed in the EAUC's Life or Learning in Future Environments Index. Here's the 4 areas covered by learning in future environments, and if your university hasn't engaged with this, I would encourage you to do so, because it does, in a sense, encourage you, if not force you, to look at sustainability from a whole institutional perspective. So on that, and just by way of illustration, I'm just going to click through these. After a couple of years of working on this at Plymouth, we, in 2008, thought, well, how do we know we are getting there? And we came up with 15 criteria, which are these, to try and judge ourselves how well we were doing. And the idea of the sustainability university, or sustainable university, I should say, arose. In writing the book and putting the book together, I asked 8 leading figures internationally to give me their take on what the term the sustainable university meant to them. And this next quote is one I particularly like, and I will show you on this next slide. From Haile Lotsisika, who's a leading light in South Africa. So she says, a sustainable university is an open space which is not known by its ivory towers, its rigid traditions, or its allegiance to power, but rather by its creativity and energy for change, a hub of social transformation and social learning for a more sustainable, just, and equitable future. So with all this work going on, by 2011, we thought we'd like to look at this more systematically and look at other people's practice. So the idea to develop a book came about. And this slide, in a way, sets out the challenge quite nicely too. And this slide comes from, is borrowed from the Regional Centres for Expertise network around sustainable development. And I think it lays out the ground quite nicely. How to do all this stuff. At Plymouth, we'd already done some work illustrated here. The book on the left, looking at the contributions of different disciplines, and then last year, commissioned by the Higher Education Academy, I produced this Future Fit framework, which is really designed to help academics new to this area to begin to get engaged. So, but beyond this, as I've said, we wanted to go further and look at the idea of institutional change. And this is based on our belief, our joint belief, that the sustainability agenda was highly important to the purposes and role and operation of universities in current socio-economic and ecological conditions. Secondly, we believe that attention to sustainability might weaken as the sector experienced a range of pressures and changes, which we are all familiar with. We also thought that much of value had been achieved in the United Kingdom, experience had been gained and lessons learned, and we wanted to document some of that. And then lastly, we hoped the book would have strategic, academic, practical, and hopefully inspirational value. So we brought together representatives from a number of universities who we know were working on this agenda for a 2-day residential here in Plymouth in June 2011. And at that meeting, we discussed the whole project and began to formulate what we wanted the book to be like and how it would pan out and what the main topics would be and what the objectives would be. And I'll just show those in this next slide, which you can read for yourselves. So the first aim was to relate and contextualize and appraise institutional stories of change. Our second objective was to draw out tactics and strategies for change in the light of common barriers and drivers. Thirdly, to identify and tease out the meaning and role of this term, the sustainable university. And lastly, to reflect on the prospects of sustainability as a key driver of the culture of universities and outline challenges and possibilities. So we couldn't cover all aspects of this agenda, but we wanted to cover some key dimensions. We also made it an intent to invite what we call short vignettes from a number of authors. So while we have the main authors writing the chapters, we also have lots of mini contributions from many other people. So there's a rich spectrum of ideas and perspectives. Another key point that we agreed on is not to just write glowing reports about our universities, which we're kind of encouraged to do institutionally, but we wanted a critical appraisal, so that would be those stories would be useful to others looking for ideas about how to take things forward. So in the end, we did try for a chapter from a leading university in Germany, but which didn't materialize in the end. But in the end, we had chapters from 10 different universities, from Aston, Gloucestershire, London South Bank, Bournemouth, Brighton, St Andrews, Edinburgh, Kingston, and Bradford, and Plymouth, of course. So that's 10. And in essence, we think or hope the book is a celebration and presentation of what has been done and a review of where things are, but also, as I've said, it's a challenge to the sector to raise its game further in the light of the big issues, which I think will increasingly define the next 50 years or so. So onto the book itself. Here's the contents. I'm just going to take another sip of water. There's an excellent preface by Sarah Parkin, who many will know is one of the directors of Forum for the Future, and a preface, and then the first, it's in 3 sections: context, aspects, and whole institutional change. So context is important, I think, which gives a rationale, as I've tried to say earlier, for the whole exercise, if you like. So I've got a chapter by myself looking at the broad context, 0+20, and the bigger reports, and the university's response, and looking at the pros and cons, the advantages and the barriers involved. Then John Blewett from Aston gives a pretty sparky chapter, critical chapter about the market agenda in higher education and its effects and how far that enables or constrains sustainability agenda. And then Daniela Torbu from Gloucestershire has a lot of international involvements and engagements, gives an overview of the international scene and declarations over the past 10 years or so, and including the declarations which were put together on higher education for the VO+20 summit. And she talks about the need for a global rebooting of higher education in this regard. So then we go on to aspects of this agenda, and as you can see there's a chapter about regional centres of expertise, which is an international movement, and there are several RCEs in this country which look at community engagement beyond the higher education sector to involve local communities and business around sustainable development. By Ros Wade from London South Bank. Chris Shield from Bournemouth gives a very good overview of leadership literature and its implications for taking this agenda forward in HE, and then Rahima and Murray from St Andrews and Brighton, respectively, talk about the university as a community itself, rather than just in relation to the surrounding community. And then Debbie Carton from Plymouth and Alex from Ryan from Gloucestershire talking about the shifts in pedagogy and curricula around sustainability and its implications across the university. And then Rahima again gives a very interesting account on what sustainability research might mean, and really pleads for a reorientation of a lot of research efforts to serve or in favour of the future, to quote the Hard Rain Project, working in favour of the future. And then the team from Edinburgh, which as you probably know is going leaps and bounds on this agenda, looks at the student experience and beyond in terms of the work at Edinburgh. And then the team, when we first assembled at our residential in June 11, really thought the whole wellbeing agenda was very, very important, and not least given the pressures on both students and staff. And there's an exploration of that chapter from a team from Kingston University in chapter 10. And then we're looking at whole institutional change. Bradford's Ecoversity initiative is very well known in the sector, and the two of the leading lights, Peter Hopkinson and Peter James, give a very clear account of how that was put together and the lessons learnt. Ross Taylor from Kingston, a rather different experience of sustainability coming from the bottom, if you like, from student and staff enthusiasm, and how that's infused the institution at Kingston. Then Heather used to work for the Higher Education Academy, and Larch, who was here at Plymouth, looked at the Higher Education Academy's Green Academy experience and interviewed a lot of the people involved in that to make a very interesting chapter there. And that Green Academy program is rolling out again this year, as you will possibly know. And then Larch and I rounded off looking at where this initiative might be going. in the last chapter. So, coming to the end now, another couple of slides, I think, 2 or 3, to leave time for questions. This is one gets these endorsements, which is very nice. This is from Chuck Hopkins, and UNESCO chair for ESD. And so far, I've had some very good responses on the book. So essentially, we argue that the University of the Future needs to be a sustainable university, and we explore what this might mean and the opportunities this presents. There's now, as you may know, increasing talk about transformative learning in higher education, but also the transformation of higher education as a whole, as reflected in the People's Treaty, Sustainability Treaty for Higher Education, prepared for the Rio +20 Summit last year. And also you may know about the international project Turnaround Leadership for Sustainability in Higher Education, which also reported last year and laid out priorities. So this idea of a step change in higher education is gaining some currency. And I see our book as being certainly not the answer to everything, but raising debate and contributing to debate, hopefully. And then to finish, and I hope I haven't gone too fast, this is a slide I use in many of my talks, and I thought I'd put it into this presentation too, and it's called Responding to Sustainability, the 4 R's. And it invites reflection from all stakeholders, really, and I'll just run through it. So retain the things, the programs, the purposes which are good in the light of sustainability, revise those which need revising, reject anything which is now outmoded, outdated, and counterproductive, but then ask what new ideas, principles, methodologies, working methods, etc. are needed in the light of sustainability, and that's renew. So we get retain, revise, reject, renew. And that model can be used at any level, right from the corporate strategy down to tomorrow's lecture and anything in between, so that we get a better alignment between our operations and our purposes and our policies and our practices and the global conditions I talked about very briefly at the beginning. So, within the space of 25 minutes or so, that's it. Just to add that I apologize for the price of the book. It is rather expensive, but Taylor & Francis Routledge like to get libraries to buy hard copies first, and then I'm pretty much promised a softback to come out next February at a much more reasonable and attainable price. So I'm not bothered about sales, but I am bothered about people being able to access it. So I hope you can access it if you need to through your library. And then very lastly, last slide, I'm sure you've got lots of questions, but these are a few questions I've got for myself really. If you take the analogy of the bridge, how big is the gap we need to address? What constitutes a really sustainable university? Taking this very seriously. How far, or how far should, or how far can this agenda go? How can it be advanced individually, personally, institutionally, nationally, internationally? And what are the main barriers and opportunities? So these questions are still very much current, and I think we'll exercise this for years to come. But overall, I feel that the sector is making progress, but we need to accelerate what we're doing in the same way as wider society also needs to accelerate towards sustainability rather than further away. And indicators are not always positive in this regard so far. Okay, I hope I haven't gabbled or talked too fast, and I hope that leaves enough time for a few questions and that it's been of some interest to you. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Stephen. That was really, really interesting. Thank you. I just put a couple of messages in the chat box just while Stephen was finishing up. If you do have sound and please just say yes in the box and I'll come and unmute you. If not, please start typing the question. I have seen that Steve has asked for a full reference list of all of your references, Stephen, so I'll ask you for that after the webinar. But he's also asked, have you looked specifically at HE's contribution to the growth of a sustainable economy? How should this develop and how can it be measured?
Right. Do you want me to try that one or the one on the chat box?
If you could just go with Steve's first. So the HE's contribution to the growth of a sustainable economy. How should we?
Well, I mean, I don't have a pat answer to this, as you might expect. You know, if you look at the literature on the green economy now, of which there's an emerging amount. It sort of raises the question about the relationship between higher education and society, and I don't think that HE as a whole, if you position that, it can be ahead of where the general society and where innovation in technology and politics is. So it can only support what's happening in wider society, really. So you know, I can't see that HE itself can necessarily be out front. Having said that, clearly there's a lot of opportunities within higher education research capacities towards supporting the green economy, and you know, I think there's a lot of potential there. It's a matter of whether sufficient numbers of academics with expertise are engaged in this. Now, I can only answer in a way from local experience, and here at Plymouth we have an Institute of Sustainability Solutions Research, or ISSR, which coordinates about 200 academics right across the university which have a sustainability interest, and they're doing, you know, a lot of things, but so are, you know, an increasing number of sustainability research institutes up and down the UK. So, you know, overall, I'm optimistic about this. I'm not an expert on metrics in terms of measurement. I know that was part of the question, so I'm going to dodge that one if I may. I think there's not much I can say about that, really. Steve
just asked, just to follow up from what you're saying. He's saying, surely HE should show thought leadership on sustainable economy. This could be very different from the current ideas of a green economy.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, I agree entirely on that one. You know, I think where HE has to sort of re-grab the reins, if you like, or re-grab the nettle, is critical debate on green economy and all other aspects of any shift towards sustainability. And I think that you know, that academic papers, holding seminars, holding conferences on all aspects of what's loosely called the sustainability transition has to come from academia as a key player and key mover on this. Yeah.
Okay, great. If you could now go for Fraser's question. So how important is an engaged senior manager? Most of us share this vision, but we can only get there with a senior lead who also gets it.
Well, it's you know, it's not going to be very great surprise to anybody for me to say yes, of course it's important to have an engaged senior manager. Again, from the experience here at Plymouth, when we started in 2005, we had what you might call passive support from senior managers. So we were enabled to get on with our work, but there was very little active support coming from the top. So in a way, it's taken some years to get that. We now have very strong senior manager report, but it's taken a while to get that to work. And one of the key things which helped that is beginning to get success stories and particularly beginning to get external recognition, which goes down very well with senior managers, and that made a big difference to the way things were perceived here. So I think getting success stories happening within your institution, even if they're small, is a way to begin to get senior managers and even heads of school on board, and then beyond that to PVCs and so on. But I get asked a lot of questions about difficult situations, and in my professional life, I've been in difficult situations, and I think you can always do something, and you build on that, and you find allies, and you start developing synergies and projects which go somewhere in order to get little islands of systemic change which can then go further. But if you can show success, and if you can begin to make business cases for sustainability too, it's another key point. Senior managers will begin to come on board in our experience.
Okay, great. Just any final questions? And this question I have, obviously with the EAUC, we focus very much on all institution types, and your book obviously focuses on HE. Would you say that it's still reflective of the challenges and issues that are faced within the further education sector too?
Sorry, what is it, Lisa?
So your book and the review that's gone into it would you say that it's still reflective of the same kind of context within further education?
Yeah, having been involved in this area for a long time, including international experience and looking at international issues, a lot of these key concerns and barriers and opportunities are the same across different sectors, both within this country and internationally. I know that wasn't the question, but also within FE, and there's quite a lot happening in FE. It's a great shame that LTIS has just been lost, by the way, which is supporting sustainability in further education, because they did a lot of good work. But a lot of the key issues and barriers and opportunities are the same to a greater or lesser degree across many institutions. So although our book talks about higher education specifically, I think people in further education will find a lot of resonances if they come to look at those chapters.
Okay, great, thanks. Just final question now from Sue. What happens next with this initiative, and are there any follow-ups after the book?
Well, that's a good question. It took quite a long time to get the book up and running and out. So, to give a limited answer, my next job is to get the book out so that people know about it, so that it does raise debate, hopefully, and help inform people. Without naming names, I've been invited to go and talk to senior managers at 3 different higher education institutions in the autumn here in the UK, which is, I find, encouraging, because I think there is an increasing awareness that change needs to happen. So, I think there's a positive momentum in the right direction. But in a way, is there any follow-up after the book? Well, certainly I, myself, and my fellow authors and other people interested in this initiative will be communicating, and we have the SHED web link, which is run by EAUC, Sustainability in Higher Education Developers, which is also partly international, and to get debate there and initiatives going through the SHED link would be good. But in a way, it's up to everybody. In a way, it's up to everybody involved in this initiative to bring more people on board and take the whole thing forward in order to create a greater momentum. And I think part of the challenge here is to try and make the links between the sustainability agenda and the agendas which a lot of academics and senior managers see as occupying them from day to day. So around employability and internationalization and recruitment and all the rest of it, we need to make the links between this very complex and challenging agenda and those concerns which form the stuff of HE agendas from a day-to-day basis. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. And absolutely, I would concur that webinars such as this, embedding the principles of your book within our conference is definitely keeping up the dialogue. We can continue this, pick up all loads of key individual points within your presentation, and have exchanges and sharing ideas. And absolutely, Steve sent me a message, to say that the EAUC, that is our role. We're here to bring us all together to have these conversations, to share ideas, and to follow up ourselves. As Stephen says, it's on us to do that. And the EAUC and definitely the Sustainability Exchange within the forums are there to bring everybody together from whatever sector to really talk about these issues and continue it on. So fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Stephen. That was really fantastic, and I think we've all got a lot out of that, so that's really fantastic. And it'll all be recorded and put onto the Sustainability Exchange in the next hour or so. So please do share this with other colleagues that couldn't book on or that you think might be interested in it. I'll be adding the list of reference, which I'll get from Stephen afterwards. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody, and hopefully see you on the next exchange.
Okay, thanks very much, everybody, and good luck.
Stephen.
Yeah.